Learning objective 3 gets at valuation allowances. Now, it's kind of a little bit confusing, but at the end of learning objective 2, we talked about deferred tax assets. And in this example that we were dealing with, the company had had a deferred tax asset relating to a bunch of future deductible amounts that were going to reduce its future tax liability. Well, those are assets. Like with any asset on a balance sheet, you have to be able to show that that asset is in fact valuable. And a deferred tax asset is only valuable if you can show that you think you'll have enough taxable income in future years to use those deductions. So, for instance, if you think you're going to have losses for the next 5 years, then that asset really isn't an asset, because even if you reverse those timing differences and you take those deductions within the next 5 years, it's not going to reduce your tax liability. It's already going to be zero from all those losses. So you would likely have to record a valuation allowance to offset that deferred tax asset, or reduce it, or reduce the benefit achieved from it. It's kind of like how the allowance for doubtful accounts reduces the accounts receivable balance down to a realizable value. So read about valuation allowances in the step 5 here. Um, there's certain types of things that qualify as evidence, positive evidence and negative evidence in determining whether or not a valuation allowance should be recorded. Um, This example right here kind of pulls together the deferred tax analysis in one spot. Remember where we did an analysis of deferred tax liabilities first, we looked at depreciation and the deferred tax liability at the end of the year of $3.632 million that was calculated. And then we also later on looked at the future deductible temporary differences that would produce deferred tax asset of 736 at the end of the year. And this is the schedule that nets the two of those down to a net deferred tax liability of 2.9 million. That amount is likely the amount that would show up on a balance sheet as the net deferred tax liability. In some cases, companies record an asset and a liability just in different spots on the balance sheet. Sometimes they net them. Let's see what else. This step calculates the deferred income tax expense or benefit. This is where the netting occurs of the deferred income tax expense and the deferred income tax benefit. Remember the expense that related to the increase in the deferred tax liability from the depreciation. This was the deferred tax benefit that related from the future deductible amounts. That netting process happens right here to get a net deferred tax expense of 175. And then looking at our total income tax provision, which is current plus deferred, you can see all three of these numbers that we've calculated now. Current, there's the deferred tax expense minus the deferred tax benefit, gets you to a total income tax expense of 1.926. A little shortcut method to get the same number is just to look at that book equivalent of taxable income. Remember, book income after permanent differences was this number times 34%. This is the total provision. And the reason why this number is the same as this total income tax expense is because the effect on the current tax liability from temporary differences is offset by the deferred tax expense or benefit. So you look at 175 as the deferred expense. This is the increase in future tax because of timing differences that happened this year. So what this really is saying is the temporary differences reduced our tax this year by 175. They will increase our future tax by 175. So that nets out, that zeroes each other out then in the total income tax provision, and effectively you just end up with 1.926, 1.926 book income after permanent differences. The temporary differences kind of cancel each other out in the overall perspective.